Got tethering issues? I bet you found this video because you're in the middle of the shoot and your tethering just stopped working. We've all been there. So I want to share with you my tips for troubleshooting tethering so we can get you back into that creative workflow. Hey friend, I'm Rachel Konek, professional food photographer, helping you take incredible photos of food. Now I'm not going to take too long because I really want to get you back tethering, but this video is sponsored by my mini course, Tethered Flow. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that after we get into some of the tips, because I understand how frustrating it is. You've probably got food on set, you've probably got talent there, you just need to get back into it. So let's quickly start with the 3 basics that you really need before you get into the rest of the tips. Now, the first one is to make sure that your camera is supported by the software. Older cameras can be a problem, but brand new cameras might take a little while to get into the software with the software update. So make sure your camera is supported. Really important tip number 1. Tip number 2, super basic, I get it, annoying also, but we need to make sure that we restart our computer because sometimes that just fixes everything. And the third one is to turn your camera on and off. Works for me all the time. So make sure you've done those 3 things. If you haven't, do them now and then come back to me if you're still having issues. Today's troubleshooting tips are brought to you by my mini course, Tethered Flow. Now, tethering is so much more than just plugging in a cable. It's really about unleashing your creativity, taking better photos by seeing them in real time, being able to make composition changes as you go and see what they look like on the screen. You can edit as you go to save time, star images, and you can also change your lighting and see what that looks like without having to go back and forth to the camera and plugging in an SD card. So if you're ready to discover what a professional tethering workflow could look like for you, make sure to check out my mini course, Tethered Flow, at tetheredflow.com. It's all about enhancing your creativity so that you can take better photos in real time. When it comes to tethering, we really have to make sure that we are going through a troubleshooting checklist. That is really the only way we're going to pinpoint the thing that is causing us issues. Should we just do like rapid fire? First one is unplug, reconnect that cable to the computer and the camera. Next one is to just try a different port on your computer. I cannot tell you how many times that has worked. Memory card is really important because this differs per brand of camera and model. So try with the memory card in, try it with the memory card out, or a memory card in that's freshly formatted. Check on your computer to make sure that your computer is recognizing your camera. On my Nikon camera, there's a little symbol that says PC, and I know when it says that the computer is reading the camera. So if you have something like that, really handy. Turn off sleep mode on your camera and your computer, as that can interrupt your tethering connection. And try a brand new battery if all of those fail. Now, if you're lucky, one of those might have worked. If you're unlucky, you're still here with me. So let's take a look at some things we can try that just take a little bit longer. So I've taught thousands of students how to edit, and I've encountered a lot of tethering problems from the community. And these are things that I have seen. They might be a little bit more obscure, but let's give them a try. The first one is to make sure that you have updated to the latest software, so the latest software for your tethering program, or check if you have a firmware update for your camera. Those things are really important. Take a little bit longer because we have to update those. So put that in your back pocket if all else fails. Testing another cable is also really important. And you might be saying, well, I don't have another cable, but you probably have a cable for your hard drive. And you can also test this out just to eliminate if it is your tethering cable. Now, I bought a brand new cable. I spent $50 on it. This was when I first started out in photography and it felt like a lot of money to me. And guess what? It had a QA issue. So I had tethering issues straight out the gate. When I took it back and they found out there was something wrong with it, they replaced it and it was golden ever since. The only way I found that out was by using a USB cable for my hard drive to test it out. So test out another cable, and if you don't have one, try to find one that you can test out that you have around the home. The next tip is something that I hope hasn't happened to you, but I have seen it happen, and unfortunately it also happened to me. So if it has, I feel your pain. The next one is that you've actually loosened or weakened the port that the cable goes into on your camera. And usually that happens because we don't or aren't using something like a tether block that's going to make the cable really stable so that we don't loosen the port. So if we've loosened the port, it's very difficult, almost impossible to fix. So the way you find out if that's happening is usually when you're tethering, you'll find it bounces in and out. If you move the camera at all, you'll probably lose the connection. You put it down, it might come back. So you can find out by really pushing it in there, taping it, making sure it's like really strong in there, just to find out if that actually solves your tethering issue. And if so, and you can't fix it and you can't afford a new camera, get something like a tether block so you can really make sure that it's stable in there and it's not going to move around at all. The next one is if you have a longer cable, so over 3 meters or 9 feet, you can get into issues where you might need a booster to help make sure that the tethering connection is stable. Now, some of the newer cables, newer computers, newer cameras, this isn't always applicable, but just something to keep in mind if you have an extra long cable, that might be something to look into. And lastly, if none of this worked, sometimes, unfortunately, with new technologies, we do face issues. So new software comes out, new computer chips come out, new cameras come out, and they actually aren't integrated with our software in a timely manner that really helps us photographers. Now, we have seen in the past big issues when we've had new computer chips with this happening with multiple pieces of software. Now, if this is a thing, you've probably heard about it, but it is important just to do a little Google to see if something comes up, because if that's the case, you actually can't do anything to fix it. We just need to wait for the software companies to catch up. Because I've been a photographer for over a decade, I've seen these things happen time and time again. Now, I know I said before, make sure to update your software, but I'm talking about incremental updates. If there is a whole new edition or version, if there is a brand new computer chip that hasn't been tested before, or a latest camera, what I tend to do is stick with my setup that works and I allow the community to test those new updates for me. And when I hear that there are no issues, then I go ahead and upgrade myself. For example, when I bought a new computer, I knew there was an issue with that chip. So I kept my old computer so that I had it as a backup. I also don't tend to update the software right away. I let other people do that, and then I see if there are any issues before I go ahead and do that myself. Or you could even roll back to the previous software if you found that that was an issue. Because my workflow relies so heavily on tethering, and I know how frustrating it can be when it breaks, I really hope that these tips have got you back up and running and into that creative flow. I'm here to help you with all things food photography, so if you're ready to take incredible photos that are good enough to eat, make sure to check out the other videos on my channel or head to my blog at twolovestudio.com. I always say hey there. Try with a empty.